a better place because you're in it. Next up, we're welcoming back up to the stage my boss, the author of my paycheck, and also the man that built the holding company 10 years ago when no one said it could be done. It took it from $0 to $3 million in revenue in absolutely record time, bringing a much-needed formidable force to an industry that didn't give marketers a lot of modern alternatives to solve very complicated problems. Chairman and CEO of Stagwell, Mr. Mark Penn, who's going to be interviewing another legendary founder, co-founder of Axios, Mike Allen.
Right now is Mike Allen.
Mike Allen from Axios, co-founder of Axios, Mike Allen, who joins us live.
And Mike choose Washington just by the nature of his recordings for being on all the time.
Welcome aboard.
Fantastic. Great. I get to interview the interviewer. Okay, I've got some really tough questions coming your way. Fantastic. So, it's great to sit down. Let me introduce the co-founder of Axios, the author of Smart Brevity, his daily Axios AM and Axios PM newsletters are must-reads. I read them every morning.
They get part of a good breakfast.
And I complain to him if I see something I don't like.
Mark complains and
you get a response.
I always answer.
He does.
You're usually right.
I told him I haven't had to complain about anything lately, so he's been on a super accurate trend.
I'll take it.
He's expanded into community building through Axios logo, revitalizing city journalism across the country, partnering with Mixing Board to connect communications professionals. And before Axios, to help build Politico, create the playbook, and earn the moniker, the man the White House wakes up to. I used to be the guy that go to sleep, but okay. And Mike, welcome today. This is fantastic. So I'm going to start out with a few questions. I know who wants to ask me questions, but I'm going to kill a few.
Great, thanks. And Mark, before we plunge in, I just want to thank you for the incredible privilege of being here. Congratulations to Stagwell on this amazing event of what's. And our theme today is community, and like we're seeing community live here in an amazing way. So everybody in this room is a pioneer, a builder. Everybody in this room is an innovator, whether they want to be or not. And it's a tribute to Stagwell. There's so many people in this room who've known each other over many years. You and I have been partners in crime longer than I can say on camera. Alexis Woods and I go back 20 years. Beth Sadu from Stagwell, Zach, Doug, and people that have worked together, Kristen Roberts and John Otto, and my colleague at Axios, Jacqueline Cameron, whose birthday is today, Gabe Brotman, all in one room. And it's a reminder of how cool this business, this extended business is. Jim Bennett has 2 sons, both worked as interns on the Hill. And on the first day on the Hill, I told them, the people you meet today are going to be in your life for 30 years. And it's for this business, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And we will, it's an interesting observation because normally people actually take from me people I've trained, and I've managed to take people from you that you've trained. So probably that's a good mix. But together, actually, many of those people were the movers and shakers behind creating the future of news. Which, look, frankly, I kind of see an idea, but the team really has taken it to this, I think, incredible initiative.
Thank you. What's incredible about this time and exciting for all of us is that we're never going to invent the future of news. When you invented modern public opinion polling, that lasted for a while. But for us, this is always going to be constant. And what we say to our colleagues at Axios, if you don't like change, get used to it. And I don't know where you're going to go, where you're not going to get change. And so, when we were coming up, if you figured out a thing, that thing could go for a good while. But all the success stories in this room, the inspiration we've seen today on the stage, but shows that now the future of news is always going to be tomorrow, and that's an incredible opportunity.
Excellent. Give me a little minute, actually, as you say, in many ways, I was there at the forefront of developing modern polling. You have been at the forefront of smart brevity and communications. So what is it that really kind of struck you as an opportunity here? Do you think smart brevity has its place? What does it do to kind of enhance news?
Thank you, Mark. The big idea of smart brevity, and something that I recommend to every single person in this room, it's a simple idea, and that is audience first. What would I want if I were the reader, viewer, clicker, however our content is being consumed? And when Roy Schwartz, Jim Van High, and I set out to invent Axios, which back then, thanks to Mark and Stagwell, were friends of Axios back before it had a name. We started as Next Great Media Company at gmail.com. And we still have several colleagues who were hired through Next Great Media Company at gmail.com. But when we set out to create Axios, the big idea was that most media sites, as long as we've been in the business, were created either for the ego of the journalist. I want to be long, I want my pretty prose out there, or the needs of the publisher. Here, have all this stuff, spend time on my site even though you don't have time. The idea behind Axios was, what would you want if you were the audience, if you weren't thinking about the business considerations, or if you weren't thinking about the ego of the journalist? And that's where we got smart brevity, which is spend the time, have the human conversations, develop the expertise, so you can say what really matters. Because coming up through legacy, we know each other going back to the Washington Post, New York Times, Time Magazine, and there it was all about words, right? But the more words, the more reward, right? Like if you wrote a long story, you might get on the section front. If you wrote an even longer story, you might be in the Sunday paper. The Post would call it a notebook, right? And that never served the audience. So Smart Brevity said, no, we're not going to put it all out there to cover our ads. We're going to do the work to figure out what you need to know, what matters to you. That was the opportunity. We developed the Axios website, obsessing about every pixel on an iPhone screen. The big idea is we can give you a story on an iPhone screen, give you the power to go deeper, and with that elegant efficiency, we were able to build a website that makes us smarter, faster about what matters, and that's a beautiful business.
You know, I always used to tell people when they were writing memos and things that it took longer to write something shorter, and never quite. They would eventually get exactly what I was talking about.
No, 100% true. And like I spend a lot of time talking to organizations about communications, and something that resonates both up and down the chain is if you give your boss a long memo or a long email, you're asking your boss to do work. And what your boss is not going to appreciate that probably. So the power of smart brevity, whether it's in a media company like ours or whether it's in your personal communication, is that's the way to be heard. And the way that we say it in our book, smart brevity, which if you have an audience of person is free, and there's a brand new version of it out this week. But what we say in the book is brevity is confidence, length is fear. The longer that we go on, the less we truly know about the topic.
Okay, switching topics. You were also behind the very successful Politico newsletter. And there are a lot of aspiring newsletter writers, owners, startup people in the audience. When you look at creating a newsletter then and today, what do you think are the keys to being a successful one?
Thank you, Mark. It is identical, and that is having a human conversation. Mark, if you and I were sitting down having literal breakfast, what would we talk about, right? And we always start with, what have you got? What's new? right? They're like always the gold standard. Tell me something I don't know. And then, what did we miss? What was on Connect? What was in USA Today? What was elsewhere in the great news organizations in this room? And what is going to happen today? What are we going to do tonight? And maybe something fun or happy, right? For 19 years now, 365 days a year, like that has been my approach to imagine talking to a human, writing for a human. If you're having breakfast, like how can you engage? And it turns out that it makes a great conversation and it makes a great newsletter.
I don't talk at breakfast, so I just
Fair.
So, and you also write Axios AM, which includes Mike's top 10, right? The big topics from like media, tech, et cetera. So what are some of the criteria? How do we get into your top 10? What do I have to do?
Literally the people in this room, like what do you need to know? So the Axios was, we make you smarter, faster about what matters. And both the smart and the fast part matter. Because the number one thing for us, and there's been a lot of conversation today about trust, but the number one thing for Axios is to be trusted. And what's interesting is our efficient format, our elegant efficiency builds trust. Because it says, I'm not going to waste your time, I'm not going to insult your knowledge. And that's why at the top of our newsletters, and for reading, but making it part of your breakfast, that's why you see, you hear why you see the number of words and the number of minutes. There's two reasons for that. So if you use Axios HQ, our software that helps you communicate with clarity and confidence and smart brevity, it puts it in automatically. The reason it's there is one, to discipline people like me, right? I just want to type, like I want to inflict words on you. You have no time for my and second, it signals to our the billions of people in the world. It signals to the reader, I have respect for your time. I know that I'm asking you for 6 minutes at the busiest time of your day. With Axios Today, I know that I'm asking you for 2.5 minutes at the second busiest time of your day. I need to make that worthy to you every single one, every single item, every single sentence. Because what we teach Axios journalists is every sentence, every paragraph, every item is a chance to win a reader forever or lose a reader forever. Like in these times with the choices that our readers have, if you lose them once, you probably lost them for good. And so that the impetus is never waste an item, never waste an idea, never waste a word, so that at the end people say, thank you, actually.
So let's pick up on that word, trust. How do you distinguish today between trust and, hey, they basically write in line with my political views. And so are people looking for trust or are they looking for reaffirmation? And how do you differentiate between those two qualities?
It's a great question and a great topic. People are looking for reality. So, Mark, isn't there a question you get asked over and over, both in person and in your text message? Don't you multiple times a day have people asking you, is this real? That's what everybody's asking. Nobody knows what's real. And so the question that Axios takes is, we call it like a doctor. A doctor doesn't look at you and say, Republican diagnosis, like Democratic diagnosis, a being scientist doesn't seem friendly or legalistic. And that's the approach that we take. We are in the reality space. And sadly for the world, the reality space is not very crowded these days. And that's why Axios has been able to do something that is very, very rare, and that is maintain trust across the spectrum. And so people aren't always going to love what we write. And it's not always going to be the warm bath, the comfort food for your readers. And we recognize that there's lots of awesome places to get that. That's not what we do. What we are going to do is bring in clinical reality. And our audience, which is difference makers, decision makers, they recognize the value of that. They recognize that that's what they need. And they know there's very, very few places to say, I know I can take this to the bank. I may not love this, but this is the best approximation of the truth as the reporters have at this moment.
Now, let's drill down a little bit into the success that you've had at Axios. I think the question really is, it's such a crowded space. There's so many words out there on any given day. What do you think, I'd say two questions. How does Axios look today compared to when you dreamed it up and what you thought it would be? And ultimately, what do you think are the keys to it standing out and being successful as it is?
Thank you. So, one, that Axios manifesto, which you Google, one, audience first, two, elegance, efficiency, three, smart, always, and fourth, we don't sell BS. No BS for sale. The amazing thing about that was 9 years ago, the Axios manifesto, unchanged. From day one, we said, we will bring you smart revenue, we will put the audience first, we will bring you smartness, excellence always, and we will sell BS. And after 20 years in the town, when you live by that every single day, it makes a difference. And both on the editorial side and the business side, people say, I can trust that. I know that you're not going to waste my time, and you're not going to insult your intelligence. It's going to be elegant, it's going to be efficient. Those are the keys from day one. And the subject matter to us, so the big idea of Axios when Laura Schwartz and Jim Anaheim and I sat down to plot was that there's lots of places, there's places you can get the best political news, there's places you can get the best market news, but the people in this room, difference makers, decision makers, people who run things, people who lead, people who aspire to lead and run things. What they need is to understand this has been their life, this has been their career, this is their specialty of understanding the collision, we just say because it's more interesting than connection or conversion, the collision of business, tech, media consumption, government, politics. Like those are the worlds, that's where we started. And that's even more valuable today than it was 9 years ago. Jim and I had a column up, and I'm happy to send it to anyone on mike@axios.com. The easiest email address in town, mike@axios.com. We have a piece about the three tectonic plates. The generational, once in a century, once in a generation, simultaneous interrelated changes in our world. And one is the way politics and government is changing to AI, and three, the way that media consumption is changing, and the way that our reality is changing, the way that realities are born overnight. And Jim and I wrote about it. Startup wise, the way to think about this, when you and I started in the business, it was like we were all looking through the same window. That there were a few newscasts that could market to every single one of them. There were a few newspapers, a few newscasts, a couple global wire services, and they all had a similar view of reality, all had similar standards. And we were all looking through that window. You might have an NBC family, which we were, or an ABC family, or you might have the Times in your driveway, or you might have the Long Beach Press Telegram in your driveway, as I did when I was growing up. But we were all looking through the same window. Now, it's like that window shattered. And every one of those shards of glass is a different reality. And so, if you're a publisher in this room, you have to know how to talk to those different shards. If you're a brand partner, if you are an agency, if you are a journalist, you have to know how to talk, to understand the different shards of glass, understand the different realities to be able to communicate to them and talk to them. And that's a massive change just in the 9 years of Axios, let alone in the 19 years of what's happening.
Actually, I read 2 books on this particular topic.
Micro-targeting.
I was there, and microtrends and microtrends squared. And my analogy was always of a pointillist painting. And that you have to understand the value and quality of each and every dot. And then when you understood that, you could take a step back and then see the entire picture. And so you can borrow that from your
But for the reporters in the room, Washington, it's a great personal reporting. It's how Bob Woodward reported Watergate and how he continues to report the greatest events of the world now. Is like he will tell you if he couldn't have had the grand story about Watergate without the B1 stories, the A6 stories, the A8 stories, and he had those and they added up. So it works on both sides of the house.
Now, you can't get off the stage without talking about AI. How are you using AI? How will you use AI? Give us some predictions about how it will affect news, journalism, consumption.
AI is an opportunity. So the way that we talk about it to the Axios team is we ask every single person who works at Axios, whether they're a day one intern or whether they're a CEO, become the world's leading expert in how AI can be a force multiplier in your role. How can your role be enhanced and more powerful, more productive by AI? Because I will tell you, one thing that tech companies that say is true is people who are good at AI will take the jobs of people who are bad at AI. And it is coming. It will rock our world, but we have time, all of us, to get comfortable with these models, to get fluent in these platforms, to understand how they work, and that will put all of us ahead of the game.
So we invested today 35% in real topics. So we're coming to you for your continued advice on how to drive more audiences in this current political scene.
And we come to you for advice and Stagwell for advice, so how does that work?
Well, that means 1 plus 1 equals 4.
Smart, revenue, elegant.
Thank you so much, really. We want to thank you for being an amazing participant in this event.
Thanks, Stagwell. Thanks for many friends in this room.